Okay, welcome to Chapter 13, the lucky chapter. Okay, so this is all about advanced styling and and controls on page 823. So they start off with styling with a cascading style sheet, a CSS. This is the concept that you should be familiar with if you took the web development course. Now, if you didn't take the web development course, this is going to be way over your head, so I'm going to cut through it really quick. So, you guys have seen like applications where you have like a theme, like you have a browser and you could have like light theme or you could have a dark theme, and it just changes the view of all the buttons and all the controls and all the background colors, that kind of stuff. That's kind of what a cascading style sheet does. It allows you to write an application with a particular look, and then someone could go in and just with just a notepad and change the colors on this thing, and then next time they launch the application, instead of being a blue background, it's a green background, that kind of stuff. So it's actually pretty doggone cool, and particularly since you don't even have to have the source code. In other words, the end user could do this. They could create their own skins, and pass them around among other people without ever actually seeing the source code to the application that you're doing. Kind of cool. All right. So in order to be able to do this, you need to be able to figure out how to talk to like a button. And so there's a particular style associated with that. So on page 825, they start off with these styles. Now this is not clear. There are thousands of styles. But one of the things you might want to look at is this -fx. That's the start of all of the styles associated with the Java FX family of stuff. And so, let's just go through some of the list here. Text alignment. Do you want, left align, right alignment, font family, and you can probably imagine there's a gazillion fonts, right? The font size, and you can have these things in point or pixel. You can have, larger and small, all sorts of cool, interesting words in here to describe how things. A font style, like is it bold, is it italics, that kind of stuff. The font weight, which is really what bold is. Text fill, which is the color. Now, that's a strange term for me, but hey, whatever, right? So continuing on, there's another one. The border style. In other words, you have a border around a box or something. It can be solid or dashed, and the border width, and the color, and the background color. Now, colors are kind of strange. There's like 3 different ways you can specify a color using CSS. One is by a hexadecimal number, and I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just telling you it can be this gargantuan number. Or you can use this function called RGB, and what it is it accepts 3 numbers as a parameter: the red, the green, the blue. That's R, G, and B. And so the numbers are between 0 and 255. And so if I wanted 100% red, I would say 255.00. That'd be 100% red and 0% green, 0% blue. Okay, you kind of halfway following me here. Again, I'm not going to test you on how to mix colors and come up with purple, or how to get to yellow or something. And then the third one, which is the one that's actually the easiest to follow, is you should use the color name, like yellow. I don't need to know the mathematical formula for coming up with yellow. I could just spell out the word yellow. That actually is probably the easiest way to do this. One of the things that's kind of, they have all these cool, now here is the hexadecimal number for each one of those things. But, just pick one. I like corn silk, or I like light yellow, or ghost white, or floral white, there's tons and tons of these guys. And so once you kind of get into it, and half the time, if you just kind of make up something, you think, I bet there's something called dark gray, and I bet there's something called light red. Just try it, see what happens. So yeah, there's lots and lots and lots of these different kind of colors. And so most people, rather than try to do the math or run the RGB function, it's easier just to give it the name. Okay, now I'm going to skip over a pretty good chunk of the textbook where they talk about using these external CSS files, because they use a concept called a selector. And once again, We just flat don't have the time to teach you about what a CSS selector is. I mean, if you're interested, go take the web development class and you'll learn all about CSS selectors. But right now, there's a technique that you can use. It's called inline CSS. And what that basically means is I don't have to have an external file called something something .css. I can just embed the color or whatever it is I'm doing directly into the object. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Okay. So there's some examples on page 837. So for example, if I have an object, let's go ahead and let's just start one up then. Okay. So once again, how do I do this? It's file, new project, and which kind of project am I going to? I'm going to check, make sure I'm doing with Maven, and I'm just going to get the simple one. And of course, I'm going to call this one Chapter 13, and say, yep, please do. And then I'm going to go in and whack the stuff that they do because, you know, they throw in this cool little function that generates the version numbers of things, which is of no consequence to me. I'm just using this as a prototype, so I'm going to unprototype it as soon as it comes up. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go to source. I'm going to go down to here. I'm going to whack this guy because I don't care about him. And then I'm going to go to here and whack those things that it did. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create me a label. And so this time it's just going to say something simple like hello. Oop. Okay, so I've got an entire application now. I have created a label. I created a scene. Actually, I don't really need a stack panel, do I? Just use a label by itself. Actually, no. Let me just go and get this guy going a little bit more. I'm going to use a VBox just for the heck of it. So I'm going to say VBox top is equal to new VBox, and it's going to contain just the label so far. And of course, I have to add a thing. All right, cool. And then I'm going to put my top guy there. All right, let me just run this to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And it should be a very simple thing with hello. Yay! Okay, cool. Now, what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to tweak this thing. All right, so when I got to my label, I'm going to say label dot and then set style. And this allows me to put the style in here. Now I could go to a style sheet, but I'm not going to do that. I'm instead going to go ahead and do one of those minus FX minus guys. And let's just use the one for font size. Font size. Now, if one of these guys has a parameter, then the style is separated from the parameter with a colon. Okay, not all of them have parameters, but if they do, that's how it works. So I'm going to say 24, then PT for point. Don't worry about what that means. If you were into typesetting and desktop publishing a million years ago, you know, point meant a lot. All right, let's just see this. See how it works. And it's hello, a big hello. Great. Let's do another one. I'm going to go in here and do another style. Label set style. And I want to change the color of this guy to red. So this is the one that doesn't exactly sound like it's text fill. Isn't that kind of a weird one? Text fill. And then I'm just going to say red. All right, let's try that. See what that looks like. And it's back to there. Now what happened here? How come I didn't get both? Well, because these things are not additive. In other words, when I apply one, I just wiped it out and put it in the other. So what happens if I wanted to do two of them at once? Well, you put a semicolon in here and then keep going. So I'm going to grab this guy and put him all on the same line. So now I have two styles that are separated by a semicolon. Okay, one more time. You have the style itself, which always starts with a dash FX. If it has a parameter, and most of them do, it'd be a colon, and then whatever the parameter is. And if you have more than one style, you separate them by semicolons, and you go like that. So this is going to be both 24-point and red simultaneously. Okay, that's basically all you kind of sort of need to know about how the mechanics of CSS works. Okay, that's essentially it. So, one more time, the rules. You know, the styles start with FX. If the property has an argument, it's separated by the colon. And if there's multiple properties, you use a semicolon. And then the use of spaces between like the properties and the arguments is not really all that important. It's more for the humans. So I hesitate to call that a rule, but it's a good idea. In other words, don't cram all these things together. You know, put spaces between, you know, the parameter and put spaces between the other guys. It just kind of makes sense. Okay. So far, so good, right? This is not difficult at all. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about radio buttons. So page 838. So 838, a radio button. So first of all, what the heck is a radio button? Are we talking about the radio? Well, okay, you have to imagine 10 million years ago when you had old style radios in cars, you had a row of buttons and you push one button and all the rest of if any other button was pushed, it popped out. That's what this thing, it's a mutually exclusive way of selecting one thing. Okay, so I'm going to need to add me some more stuff here. Alrighty. So I'm going to go in here and add me a button. Okay, so I'm sorry, not a button. We're going to add us a radio button. So I'm going to do radio button RB1 is equal to no radio button. And I'm going to call this one, I don't know, first. Cool. And of course I need to go in here and tell it to add an include guy, an import guy. And so I'm going to need a couple more radio buttons, so I'm just going to copy and paste these guys because I'm lazy. Okay, so I have an RB2, an RB3, and an RB4. And this is first, second, third, and fourth, whatever the heck this thing is that we're asking you to fill in. Okay, first of all, now since I'm using a VBox, this is just going to be, you know, right? So let's just take a look at this guy. I mean, if I guess I could take the time to put this in an HBox and make it kind of go horizontal, but I'm not sure if I'm going to. Ooh. Oh, ha ha ha. I forgot to put them in here. RB1, RB2, RB3, RB4. Let's try that. That should work much, much better. Okay, so the way this thing works is I can click one of these guys, and whichever one I'm supposed to click, the other ones go away. Well, how come that isn't working here? How come this thing isn't behaving like I was expecting it to behave? I'm supposed to be able to select only one. The whole point of a radio button is it is mutually exclusive. That's what it does for a living, and it ain't doing that. Something is wrong. But we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so you don't get to learn what that is until after this.